What's up everybody, this is Donnie. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a fakemink type beat. If you like this tutorial, drop me a like and subscribe to my channel, and comment down below and let me know what tutorials I should work on next. Now, first before we get into the beat, I'll give you a quick preview. So one common theme with fakemink's beats is the use of a vocal sample, and typically that's what I'll start with when I'm making these kinds of beats. However, I didn't start with that this time. I started with chopping up a bit of guitar, so that's what I'm going to run you through first. Now, all of the samples in this beat are taken from a Jimmy Eat World song called Over, and basically with this guitar, I didn't declick it, so when I play it, when I solo it, you'll hear a bit of clicking, but I didn't bother declicking it because there's always percussion or another layer going over it. I kind of did declick it in a way actually. I did I did EQ some of the high frequency, the really high end out where the clicking was happening. But yeah, basically this is the guitar and this is what I started with this beat. So pretty simple. I'd basically with these I'd reversed them and I chopped it up. So yeah, this is actually a bit of a longer clip that I've chopped up and sort of rearranged. I just played around with it until I found something that I liked. That's basically what you want to do with these kinds of beats. Just play around with the samples and whatever. Same as the vocal samples. Just find something that sounds good and just run with that. Okay, so for the guitar effects, first off we've got Fruity Blood Overdrive. I think I just loaded the default preset and played around with it a bit. Feel free to copy the settings. Then we've got OTT, just a good multi-band compressor. Secondly, we've got, thirdly, we've got the delay. We've got the timing at 8. Brought the cutoff back a bit. Probably brought the volume back a little bit as well. And we've put it on ping pong delay. I've also turned down the overall, effect volume on the insert as well. We just want a little bit of delay. Don't want it to be too washed out and loud and that sort of thing. Next, we've got these EQs. I don't know what the hell I was thinking with all these EQs, to be honest. I've got more here as well, but I'll get into that in a bit. It's probably a bad habit that I've gotten into, but I just load a bunch of EQs on mixer inserts sometimes. I guess here I was just cutting out the low end to make room for, the kick and the bass and that sort of thing. Dropped a bit of the low end back and a bit of the high end. Honestly, don't even know why I did that, but whatever. And I've done that again a little bit here and then boosted the treble for some reason. Uh, I don't really know. Anyway, moving on. Next, we've got the SSL Fusion Stereo image. This just gives it a bit of width. And if I'll play the guitar for you now. As you can see, it's kind of hitting pretty center, but a little bit pan to the right. Next we've got another EQ. Why isn't it loading? Okay, cool. This is the side EQ. Again, I don't know what I was doing here, to be honest. Probably just, it looks like I was just cutting out the bass from the sides. Generally, I don't know, it depends, but you generally don't want too much bass on the side. Like, bass should be more so in the mids. Anyway, I think there was a bit of resonance here, and I didn't really like it, so I cut it out. But yeah. Then we have the second FabFilter Pro EQ. This is the mid EQ. And then I don't know what I've done here. This isn't mid or sides, just in general, but whatever. I've just boosted the low end in the mid, taken out some of the highs in the mids, kind of the same philosophy. You know, you want the sides to have a little bit more treble rather than low end. So that's what I've done here. Then I have a multi-band compressor, just cutting out even more of the low end, kind of. Yeah, I don't know. You probably don't need this honestly here, but whatever. This effects rack, like I said, is kind of insane, but whatever. Then I've disconnected it from the master fader, so I'm not sending it to the master. I'm instead sending it to insert 21. And I have a bunch of other stuff here, so a bunch of other EQs. I've got like 6 EQs here. I've got a glitch, and there's nothing on it. Great. Okay, I don't know what I was doing with this effects rack. So we're gonna move on. Just wanted to explain something quickly as well before I move on. So I've got my guitar on insert 20. As I explained before, I disconnected this from the master fader and I've bussed it to insert 21. Then I've also disconnected insert 21 from the master fader and it's connected to insert 28. And I've got the vocal chops bus to this channel as well, but I'll explain that more in a little bit. Now let's move on to the vocal chops. So I'll play you the first line of the vocals. Pretty simple, just sort of like a little bit of rhythm and melody in here. And then we've got a couple of little different sections. So like, you know, in this part, there's kind of like a vocal slide. Just like, you know, mixing it up here and there to kind of make the track a bit more interesting. But yeah, let's move on to the effects for this one. So, Jesus. Bear with me. All right, so we've got insert 24. Now, in Serato Sample, what I generally do for these vocal chops is I'll turn off every layer. You can use this built-in splitter on Serato Sample, it's super handy. And I just turn off everything except the vocals. Serato Sample's great. I have it on 79 tempo and my project is 152. It isn't synced. I don't really know why I did this, to be honest, but I don't know. Basically, the idea here is you just play around with it, and you know you use this chopping thing. Um, you know you can make it find the samples itself, or you can chop them and that sort of thing yourself, set slicer, and I'll do a Serato sample tutorial in the future. But that isn't what this video is. So yeah, basically just using Serato sample, I've pitched the sample up 6 semitones. And yeah, that's the first line of the vocals. In terms of the effects, we've got I've cut out the low end here. Then we've got the OTT again. We've got the side EQ, just cutting out the bass. And then we have another low cut EQ. Then we have a de-esser, so basically just taking some of the sort of like harshness out of the vocal sample and the plosive sound, so like P's, B's, S's, that sort of thing. It just sort of softens those. Then we've got the stereo shaper. I was just playing around with this, I guess, just trying to get it to fit in the mix a little bit better. This is a pretty good plugin for sort of, getting things to sit where you want them to in a mix. And yeah, I guess I've just got it, sitting roughly in the middle, but kind of boosted to the right a little bit. And yeah, and then we've got the limiter. Um, so as you can see, it's kind of just chopping off the very tops of those, the loud parts. Just a little bit of limiting, little bit of compression sort of thing. Didn't go too crazy on it, but yeah, just a little bit to sort of compress that dynamic range a bit. Then we have this sent to insert 28 as well, like I explained before. Um, but yeah, that's about it. Oh, I should probably also mention as well on this guitar insert, you can see here this dial here. That is the stereo separation dial. So I've got it separated just a little bit. It's probably pretty negligible in terms of the effect that it has on the sound, but um, yeah, it's just for like a bit of stereo width, I guess. All right, so moving on, we have the second layer of the vocal chops. This is what they sound like by themselves. And that's pretty much it, pretty straightforward. Use Serato sample again for these ones. Same idea, so pitched up 6 semitones, same BPM, isolated the vocal sample. Only difference here is that on one or two of the chops I reversed them, so I'll show you what that looks like in the sampler. You can see that on this chop I've hit the reverse button. But essentially the same idea here. So just, play around with it, play stuff on your MIDI keyboard or link your desktop keyboard to your thing up here and, just mess around with it and find something that sounds cool over the guitar sample or the first layer of vocals, whatever you've chopped, or, a melody on a synth that you've created, whatever. You just play around with it and find something cool. With the effects, we've got it monoed up and panned slightly to the left. So basically this is kind of bringing the stereo image in a bit, kind of the opposite of this. So it's merging the stereo signal, making it more towards the center of the mix rather than the sides. For this, we've just, again, cut the low end out. Just don't really want that in this sample. Basically, we're just making room for the kick and the bass and that sort of thing. Got another OTT on here. We've got a de-esser again and a limiter. Pretty much the same thing. So fast attack, fast release, and we're just chopping off a couple of decibels just off those really loud bits. So before we move on to the drums, first I just want to quickly run through the effects chain that I'm running all my samples through. So as you can see here, I'm bussing the guitars, insert 20 and 21. They're being bussed to insert 28. I've got a gap here just between my guitar and my vocal layers. So they're both here, and you can see that they're both being bussed to insert 28 as well. So first we've got a low cut, just cutting out all the sub bass. Just don't want it there, it's going to be clashing with the kick in 808. Then we've got this. Now I actually hadn't touched this. I realized I hadn't touched this when I exported this beat, which I probably should have. I think it sounds good being a little bit wider. I'll show you how it sounds. So yeah, using this on a bus can kind of help you gain control of the stereo image of multiple different layers, right? So that's what this plugin is helpful for. Then we've got Effectrix. It's pretty much just used on this one part of the beat. So basically, we've just got a bit of a stutter here, and then a vinyl stop. Just to add a bit of flavor, a bit of spice. And then next we've got a low cut here, so cutting out all the sub bass again, and yet another low cut. And now, one thing that I want you to know is that here at Evil Donny Beats, we don't give a hoot about the low end artifacts, okay? Because we don't want the sub bass in our beat from the guitar and the vocals, right? Duh. So take it all out, bro. And that's as simple as it gets, right? I mean, I know some people, you know, they talk about don't remove them. There's artifacts there and stuff. Man, I don't give a damn. Look at my hat. Look at my hat, man. There's no low end. There's no low end. I don't want low end in my hat, man. If you're making like a mainstream trap beat like 808 Mafia or whatever and you got low end in your hat, keep it in there, dude. Don't EQ it out. If you want it to hit like that, just keep it. But I don't. For this beat, I did not want it to hit like that, and why would I keep it in there? There's nothing there, man. It's just adding frequencies to the beat that don't need to be there, and it's clashing with other stuff. If you have a bunch of percussion layers that have a bit of like low end coming through and you don't EQ them out, they're just gonna stack, and it's just gonna take up room in your beat, right? Anyway, that's the way I look at it. If I'm tripping, let me know. But man, what can I say? We don't give a damn about the low end artifacts, bro. What can I say? Moving on, we have a reso. Now, if you load this up, it'll say calculate targets. You just play your track. You just play your track, hit calculate targets, and it'll give you these. This is, where your resonance is, and you can bring them up and down to your liking. And then, now I know I just dissed the low end, but the low mids are important for this, for these layers, and for kind of the texture and the fullness of the guitars and vocals. So I've actually boosted a little bit of the low mids here because, as you'll see, they just weren't quite hitting the same as the rest of the frequencies, and more importantly to me it didn't sound like it was full enough. So don't just look at the EQ all the time and like mix with your eyes. If something sounds good and it sounds right, then it's probably going to sound good. And look, I'm mixing on Steel Series headphones, so I don't know, it's not going to be perfect, right? But like, you know that, yeah, just another little tip for you. Then we've got the limiter. So again, um, fast attack and release. We're kind of just um, chopping off those really loud bits again and just compressing it a little bit. And finally, we've got the drums. I'll just play you a quick snippet of those. Donnie, 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 Donnie. So pretty straightforward. Basically, with the sound selection, you want to go for like an old sounding boom bap snare, like 90s hip hop snare, like that. And then I've layered that with this. And you can see here I've adjusted the shift. I've turned the shift up on both of these snares, I believe. Yeah, and basically that just gives it, a bit more of a human feel. Makes it puts it slightly behind the beat, so it has a bit more of like a groove to it. I think I may have used the shift for a couple of these. Okay, no shift on the kick, but that can sound good in these beats sometimes. But yeah, there's another one. So this Zaytoven snare, I've turned the shift up on that a bit. But yeah, just play around with those and see what sounds good. And then basically for the 808, it's just a spins 808. Pretty simple. I mean, I've only got an EQ here. I actually EQ'd out a bit of the sub bass, which is pretty uncommon for me. But I think that these tracks don't need a whole lot of sub bass, and I was liking how that sounded. Also cut out the very high end because we just don't want that in there. Wasn't bringing much to the 808, so I got rid of that. Then we have the rat kick. So pretty much any old hip hop rat kick will do. Don't have compression on the 808 or the kick. Sometimes I'll add that in. Often my effects chains will be, much longer than this, but we've kept it simple here. And yeah, for the kick, we EQ'd out a little bit of the sub bass and then boosted a little bit around the 90 hertz region again, just making the mix a little bit clearer down here, and just boosting sort of where the 808's really, really hitting. And then we EQ'd out a bit of the mids and high end just to make a bit more room for other layers in the track. Then we have the snare. So we've EQ'd out pretty much all of the sub bass with these EQs. We want a little bit of bass to be coming through here just because it has, you know, that thud and that knock to it. And then we have a compressor and another compressor. So yeah, just giving it that extra bit of punch. Then we have the hat. Like I said before, you know, it'd sound pretty horrible if we didn't cut the low end out, right? So cutting the low end, and I'll put the flanger up here just so that, you know, if there's any low end introduced by the flanger, it's getting cut out. And yeah, flanger for a little bit of character just kind of gives it a bit more of a groove again. And then the stereo shaper to make it kind of more central, and we're boosting a little bit on the right. Then we've got the triangle, pretty simple, just a low cut. It was hitting really harshly here, and there was a lot of percussions that were hitting around here, so I just took that out. Then we've got the shaker, just a low cut, pretty simple. Then we've got the ride, again, low cut, cutting a little bit here, again, just reducing that harshness a little bit, and then making really sure that we cut out the sub bass again. Then we've got the limiter. Basically what this is helping to do is boost up the parts where the ride rings out, and we're cutting off the top of it because otherwise it'd hit a little. I mean, it's not hitting too hard without the limiter, but you know, it's just kind of, again, just a bit of compression to squish that dynamic range. And then we've got the fill snare, which is this. Now, at this point, I should probably explain the panning as well. Actually, I'll do that in a bit. Okay, so the fill snare, for this one, we've got this. Oop, it's muted. Monoed up a fair bit down here. You can see that I've monoed the kick and the 808 fully. The snare is pretty much fully merged as well. Same as the hat, the triangle. The shaker isn't. I wanted it to be coming through a little bit more on the opposite side as well. So I've panned it a little bit to the right, but it's still coming through on the left. I just think it sounds nice with a bit more of stereo width on the shaker. And then you can see that I've panned the percussions pretty much slightly to the left or right. Again, you know, we kind of want to keep these pretty central, but you know, we want them to have their own space in the mix as well. So just that little bit of panning helps you do that. Then we have the Zaytoven snare, which is this one. Low cut, boosting the low and highs where it's, you know, where it's hitting. Again, another low cut, and I just think I had that to sort of like monitor what was going on, but that's not doing anything. That's fine. Now this is the clap channel here. This is a little bit more complex. Basically, what we've done is used a stereo enhancer to yeah, basically you'll see what it does. Right, so a bit louder, a bit more room in. It takes up more room in the mix, but it also sounds really nice. And then cutting the low end, boosting the high mids pretty harshly. I mean, I don't generally do that, but I just liked how it sounded. And then we're cutting out the high end in the middle of the track. We just don't want it to really be hitting in the middle. We kind of want to give it that stereo width, and it kind of, you know, makes it sound a little bit more interesting in terms of the fit with the rest of the percussions. Next we have the rim click. Pretty simple, just a low cut, not too much going on. I didn't add any shift to this one. That can sound nice, but you can see that there's already a gap at the start of the sample, so it's already hitting a little bit behind the beat. But yeah, pretty simple with the percussion there, the little rim click. Then we've got the open hat. I actually haven't EQ'd that at all. Probably should have, but whatever. Just monoed it up and panned it a little bit. Sounds fine. Then next we've got this kind of longer open hat, just cutting out the low end. Haven't actually touched the mono or stereo separation thing, but that's fine. Then we've got this crash and the reverse crash, like that. Just cutting the low end again, pretty simple, monoed it up, panned it a little bit to the right. The idea with the panning here is kind of I pan my crash a little bit to the opposite side of my hat. Typically I'll pan my snare to the opposite, a little bit to the opposite side of my hat as well, but I've got it on the left here. Just, you know, just depends on what sounds good. I've got the shaker over here. I guess the idea is the layers that have a bit more high end, Again, like this is pretty general, but I'll kind of pan them to opposite sides. Half of the ones with the high end on one side, like claps, and I'm talking like claps, hats, shakers, cymbals, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, just pan them, kind of just play around with it, but give them their own room in the mix. And I think that's about it. And just quickly, I'll run over my master chain and actually my drum bus as well. So I have just put this Fab Filter multiband compressor isn't doing anything. Neither is the Rezo. I just had to put them um, on this drum bus because I had them on my sample bus and they kind of throw my project out of tempo. So I have to kind of put them, like I have to apply them to everything, if that makes sense. But yeah, anyway, they're not doing anything. Just got this 20 hertz and 18 kilohertz cut on the drum bus as well. I'll show you the difference with that. So you can kind of hear it does have a little bit of a difference, and it kind of just makes things sound a little bit clearer. Then we've got the limiter. Again, fast attack, fast release, just chopping off the peaks here. Everything was kind of already mostly compressed and it sounded, how I wanted to, so don't have to do a whole lot of compression here. It's already sounding good. The levels are pretty balanced, so yeah, it's sounding nice. And that is the drum bus. Then on the master fader, this is kind of just I'm pretty sure this is just my default chain. But yeah, I've got the soft clipper. Probably don't need that, honestly. It's not clipping or anything like that. I just don't think I did a whole lot with this master chain. I guess I've turned up the width a little bit here. Glitch doing nothing. It's turned all the way down. And again, it's just a default. Like this is just a saved chain that I've loaded, and yeah, haven't really done much with a lot of the plugins. Haven't done anything with the multiband here or the EQ. A little bit of compression. In fact, that's not really. I mean, it's not doing a whole lot there. Could probably drive that up a little bit. Yeah, could probably drive that up a little bit. Whatever. But it doesn't really need a whole lot of compression. It's still sounding good already, and like everything. I don't know. Everything's just sounding how it should. Um, it's peaking about here. We've got plenty of headroom for a vocalist to add vocals to the track, so I mean it's sounding pretty good. And if it's looking good and sounding good to you, then if it's not broke, then don't fix it. You know what I mean? So yeah, peaking at 4.5 dB, still a decent amount of headroom for a vocalist to hop on the beat. So yeah, and then we've got the loudness meter. I mean, that's just to kind of monitor your LUFS, which is perceived loudness. But I'm not going to go into depth on that now. But yeah, that's my master chain, and that's the beat. So thanks for watching, and if you have any tutorials that you'd like me to work on, drop a comment below. I'll do a drum kit at 1,000 subs as well if I make it there. And let me know if there are any sounds in this beat that you'd like me to add to that kit. Cheers.